Welcome everyone to our Roundtable virtual convening. So excited to be speaking with you all virtually at this point in time. My name is Greg Silverman. I'm a chef and former restaurateur, and for the last 5 years, I've been the CEO of the Westside Campaign Against Hunger. The Roundtable, for those of you who are new to our community, is a dedicated network of emergency food providers collaborating to bring more resources to communities so none of our neighbors goes hungry. It was 4 years ago that I started calling up other leaders in our sector to discuss this idea of what to many seemed radical, that we could work together, frontline food providers, to make sure our organizations had better food at better prices. It was a simple idea that I learned years ago when I owned 3 restaurants. Never trust a price, buy better food in bigger quantities, and always work together. 4 years in the making, 4 years of fundraising, 4 years of engaging program partners, of data collection, of dialogue, but mostly 4 years of working together so we can all achieve our missions. And 4 years of support. Big thanks on the outset here to all of our funders who have supported us on this journey across the Roundtable. From the beginning, Robin Hood Foundation, Sea Change Capital, and New York Health Foundation, and more recently, amazing support from UJA Federation of New York and the New York Community Trust. Thank you all. The Roundtable is a table, right? It's the table we sit at that is focused on not simply disrupting an obviously inefficient emergency feeding system, but reimagining and revamping our work and holding each other accountable in the process. It's been a bumpy ride for all New Yorkers we serve the last 2 years, and our collective impact has grown. And we couldn't have done it without each other. And so we're excited to be here today together, talking about our collaboration. 4 years ago, we started out talking about the price of chickens and onions and apples. And now we're talking about warehouse space, advocating for changing funding systems at the city and state level, and how to make our voice heard. And it is. Every member of the Roundtable is in the midst of a real estate project. We advocated for a change to the emergency feeding assistance program, and it happened in all the ways we wanted in order to bring more choice of fresh produce to more New Yorkers in need. And when the city brought together a table of change makers to innovate feeding during the pandemic, it had the usual amazing players, Food Bank, City Harvest, United Way, and HRA. And then they invited 4 frontline providers, all of whom are members of this Roundtable. So cheers to the Roundtable member organizations and their entire teams for all they do each and every day. And now I'd like to introduce Ben Kerrick, the senior consultant at KK&P, and our amazing partner who coordinates our Roundtable work and who will review today's agenda and share a bit more about the Roundtable's past year of work together. So thank you, everyone.
Okay, thanks so much, Greg, and thanks to everyone for tuning in today. As Greg said, I'm Ben Kerrick. I'm a senior consultant with Karen Karp and Partners, or KK&P. KK&P has facilitated and coordinated the work of the Roundtable since its launch back in 2018, and it's been such an honor to work with such a great group of organizations and people over the last 4 years. The Roundtable started out as a collective purchasing pilot with 4 organizations: Westside Campaign Against Hunger, New York Common Pantry, St. John's Bread and Life, and Project Hospitality. After the success of that first pilot, we decided to keep on working together and to bring more of New York's leading emergency food organizations into the fold. In 2020, we welcomed the Met Council and Holy Apostle Soup Kitchen. Last year, we welcomed POTS. And early this year, the Campaign Against Hunger joined us. Now, our 8 organizations think of our work in 3 different areas: strategic purchasing, advocacy, and mutual support. And I want to share a few highlights from our past year of work together. First, just a few numbers to demonstrate the impact, reach, and commitment of the Roundtable. In 2021, Roundtable organizations served a total of 40 million meals to New Yorkers in need. All of the Roundtable organizations are committed to prioritizing fresh produce and distributed 14.3 million pounds of fresh produce in 2021. Roundtable member organizations distributed food from more than 600 distribution sites across all 5 boroughs. And Roundtable member organizations account for nearly $18 million in food purchasing power, including both government grant programs and privately raised funds. All of the Roundtable organizations demonstrate tremendous buy-in by contributing over 500 hours of in-kind staff time on an annual basis to the activities of the Roundtable. The Roundtable has really embraced its advocacy voice over the last couple of years, and we're currently partnering with equity advocates to develop a clear advocacy agenda to advance the missions and impact of the Roundtable member organizations. We've continued to innovate in strategic purchasing, and in March of this year, we tested a new approach in purchasing wherein several Roundtable members went in together to order a full tractor trailer of oats. That purchase saved a full 50% compared to the price they would have paid to traditional distributors. I want to give a shout out to my colleague at KK&P, Max Bernstein, who has been instrumental in coordinating and guiding these bulk purchase orders. Also a huge shout out to the Met Council, who has handled all of the logistics and warehousing, really a linchpin role for making that bulk purchasing work. So thank you to the Met Council. As for mutual support, our group continues to meet monthly or more. We're constantly sharing information with each other, keeping each other in the loop, and exploring new ways to collaborate. Concurrent to the release of this convening video that you're just watching now, we'll be releasing our 2021 annual report. If you don't get an email with a link to the report, just visit our website at theroundtablenyc.org, where the report will be posted. Next, I'll give a brief little overview of today's agenda for this convening. After I finish talking, we'll kick it over to our first panel, which is perspectives from our New York City community members. We really wanted to ground the Roundtable's work in the context of the folks that these organizations are here to serve. So you'll hear from 3 individuals who started out as customers of Roundtable organizations and have since deepened those relationships in various ways. Next, we'll have a brief fireside chat on the role of philanthropy and public policy in supporting innovation and collaboration, featuring Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine and Shana Wertheimer from UJA. After that, we'll have another panel discussion that we're calling By Design, Intentional Facility Design for Greater Capacity and Impact. You'll hear from Roundtable members as well as an architect on the ways that emergency food organizations are innovating in their physical infrastructure. Next, we'll have a second brief conversation, this one relating the work of the Roundtable to New York State Collaborative Action Networks. That conversation will feature Bronwyn Starr from the New York Health Foundation and Natasha Pernica from Food Pantries for the Capital District. And finally, Greg will come back to close us all out. So now I'd like to kick off our first panel, that's perspectives from our New York City community members. The community members on that panel are Darlene Waters from Holy Apostle Soup Kitchen, Nate Shectman, volunteer from the Met Council, and Martina Santos, who is a board member of the West Side Campaign Against Hunger. And that panel is moderated by Jessica Chait, the Managing Director of Food Programs and Policy at the Met Council. So with that, I'll hand it over to Jessica.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you all for joining us today. As you heard, I'm Jessica Chait, Managing Director of Food Programs and Policy at Met Council. Since joining the Roundtable, Met Council's work has grown tremendously, and we are now serving over 200,000 people each month through our extensive network of kosher and halal food pantries, and the work we do to lift up our sister programs like those on this call today. We are kicking off this event by having our first panel focus on the community, those who we serve and who serve right alongside us in our mission to get more food to more people who need us. That's what the Roundtable is really all about. And so I was particularly moved when speaking to our panelists, Nate Shectman, Darlene Waters, and Martina Santos, because they all share in this commitment. So let's turn it over to them and get this started. Darlene, who is actually my neighbor and has been involved with Holy Apostles for decades. Why don't we start with you? Tell us, Darlene, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your connection to the church?
Okay, my name is Darlene Waters. I am TA president of Elliott Chelsea Houses. I've been involved in Holy Apostle for a long time. My connection now with them is more so, having people go over to find out their needs, and they're able to address those needs. And one of those big needs are getting food to our neighborhood so that we can feed people who really don't have the money, or because of COVID doesn't have a job anymore. And it's really needed and necessary. Not only that, they also provide health issues. They'll fill out paperwork for you, and they just take care of the community in those ways. I'm working close with Michael and Stephen. Pick up food every Tuesday. And what we do as association people, we go to the senior building and we give out food if they need it. And they get a lot of thanks and a lot of prayers when we deliver the food to them. And these are people who can't come out of their house. So I might have maybe about 4 or 5 different people that, each week. Holy Apostle is there for the neighborhood. Let me just say this. We are very fortunate to have a Holy Apostle there, and fortunate enough to have the needs that we need in this time of need.
That's great. Thank you, Darlene. And Darlene, I just want to pick up on, you said it's that Holy Apostles is there to take care of the community, but it sounds like through your work of coordinating the Tenants Association, coordinating your tenants, frankly, to access that, it sounds like that you take care of the community as well.
Yeah, but I couldn't do it without other people there, like Holy Apostle. I mean, they give out, for the kids, for the schools, books, toys, and Thanksgiving. It's just wonderful. It's a blessing.
That's great. Thank you. We're going to turn to Nate. Nate recently moved to New York City. Nate, can you tell us a little bit about that and how you learned about Met Council?
Sure. So I moved to New York a little over a year ago, and it's not super cheap to live here. So I'm a college student. I study film and screen studies along with advertising and integrated marketing communications, quite the mouthful. And I want to say freshman or sophomore year, I met a friend through PACE's Hillel organization. And they told me about the services that Met Council had to offer. So I started making use of the online grocery ordering system.
Great. Well, welcome to New York, Nate, and we're so happy we can have you here today and that we can help you as you pursue your studies. We're gonna turn to Martina. Martina, you live in the Bronx, but you were involved with WSCAH in Manhattan. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Martina Santos. My story was starting in 2009 when and I've been through with the really depressed. A friend of mine came and she invited me to WSCAH, and I went to WSCAH and picked up some food, and my story started to do the customer chef training in WSCAH. And since 2009, I service to the community with WSCAH. I like WSCAH because WSCAH, they treat me like a family member, and each person I could find before the pandemic, I tell her, go and join us at least like once a week, go out the house. Depression is so seriously, and I help a lot of people. Also, I help with my own family. Because my own family is the low-income family where they need, to certify that food stamp, Medicaid, and going to pick up some food. I help with my neighbor. And that's my story. I like to see people happy. I like to give people joy, And I know when they go into WSCAH because they have some struggle to put food in the table, especially on this time we're living right now. Right now, it's a difficult time we live in. The price is going up, everything is up, And the money is not enough because I know people, they got two jobs to feed the family, pay the light, the electricity, pay everything, you know. And WSCAH is one of those organizations that they serving the 5 boroughs of New York. It's not like some pantry, they say, well, you don't live in my neighborhood, or you don't live in the zip code around the area. They give it to you some food and they say, don't coming back because we cannot give it to you more food. We got people coming from New Jersey, they give you food because that's the purpose of WSCAH. Make sure every family member don't get hungry, go to bed hungry. They put some food for 3 or 4 a day in the table to that family. That's what I like to WSCAH, and that's why I'm so happy to serve him, to give him my time, my volunteer time to WSCAH. When I give it the whole week, I do it. But right now, I have an appointment and things, you know, and I need to resolve. And I go only 1 day a week. But I help in the much I can when I'm going over there.
Beautiful. Thank you, Martina. It's really beautiful. I'm going to go back to you, Darlene. You shared with me that you basically grew up at Holy Apostles, but you only started going to their food pantry within the last 5 or 10 years. You spoke about all the services they provide, but I'm curious, what do you like about that food pantry? I know here in our neighborhood, we are lucky to have others, but you like Holy Apostles. What is it that they do that makes you feel so connected there?
Well, they're beautiful people. They treat you really well. There's no problem. They're always telling me, tell everybody to come over. If you see someone, tell them we're here and tell them what we're doing. You know, with the giving out the food, with giving clothes, and just taking care of people. It's a joy to be here to try to help. And also, you know, I'm on their board.
Mm-hmm.
But I really, it's just, it just feels really great to have somebody in the community like that helping us. And I know somebody I can go to if I'm having a problem, you know, like taking care of something on my part. And also, you know, Darlene, why don't you just come over here and have the person come and talk to us? Let me just put it to you this way. We went to dinner. They have a supper, which is beautiful. People actually come out. They're able to sit in and discuss. People don't like to go out today. They're really scared to go out, but they come to Sunday supper. And while we were there, we were just talking about, oh, we have to get our ID renewed. And here comes the girl with her computer, and she said her laptop, and she says, oh, I could do that for you right now, right here.
Yeah.
She did it. We got it I got mine in 2 weeks. I'm saying, oh my God, I didn't have to go up there to do it. Then now somebody else went to her. These are things that they actually do. It's not just giving out the food, which is really a big thing. When we had the COVID started, I remember going through the park, and I couldn't hardly get through the park. I looked to 29th Street, going to 10th Avenue. There was people against the wall. These were people who were dressed. These were people who had jobs, okay? Then I looked up towards 8th Avenue. That line was around the doggone corner. I came out, and it really, after all of this time helping and knowing they're there, it really hit me hard. Yeah. And I'm so glad that they were there in their community, you know, to address our needs.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. It was such a challenging time for us all. I want to pick up on, Darlene, something else you said about you're on the board. And when we spoke before, you told me that it's important for everyone's voice to be heard. How does that happen at Holy Apostles? And how does your involvement there help make that possible?
Well, they got somebody they can talk to. There's somebody they can talk to and actually share their feelings about whatever, if they're having a hard time at home, or if they're having a hard time, you know, talking to somebody, or a hard time going to the hospital. I mean, there's somebody there who's going to listen. And believe me, they do listen. And they try their best to help the best way they can. And if I get that feedback from a lot of people, you know, and every time they get ready to have something, I put the flyers, I make sure the flyers are given out to everybody. And they come back to me, oh yeah, you know, that dinner was good today, or I got these clothes, or I mean, I get feedback. So I know we're taking care of, and I know these people are enjoying what they're doing, and they're very grateful for that. Hopefully that
That's
answers.
great. Yeah, no, that's great that you're able to advocate through your position on the board, are able to advocate for yourself and for your community, and that, as you said, you hear they're listening to you.
Yeah, there's more resources. They have so many resources, so that's exactly what we need.
It's great. Speaking of resources, Nate, you use the pantry system in a pretty unique way as you think about the hundreds of pantries that exist around the city. You order your food online. Can you tell us a little bit about that and why that works well for you?
Sure. Well, you know, being a student, it's a lot of work. You know, I'm attempting to get kind of, you know, my foot in the door somewhere, and, you know, achieve my independence out here. You know, there's a lot of hustle and bustle that goes into it. So to be able to sit down and just, you know, you get a unique ID, right? And you log on to the pantry website, and then it's like a point system. And you get a certain amount of points, and you go and you select, you know, items from different categories until you've expended all those points. And it's just super convenient. You know, it's super convenient because it's a couple of clicks and my order's sent right over. I pick up the time to, you know, go over and pick it up. And it's just so easy. You know, it makes my life so much easier, and I'm just very grateful to have such a unique and helpful service available.
That's great. That we're so happy that we can provide it, and that it works. That it works to improve your access, which is really the intent of the program, right? The idea that people should not have to experience the long. Darlene spoke about long lines, which is not always a bad thing insofar as we can serve everyone online, but really that services can be delivered in ways that really eliminate or reduce those barriers that some people might face as a busy student. You wouldn't have time to wait on that line, but still shouldn't not be able to access that food. You mentioned that when we spoke earlier, that when you have the time, you have volunteered at Met Council's Manhattan Fulfillment Center. Maybe just share, why did you do that, and what was your experience like?
Sure. Well, I had been using the service for a couple of months, and every time I went to go pick up my order, I just could not voice enough how grateful I was, and you know, how appreciative I was of all the good work that Met Council does. So around Christmas time, I was like, you know what, I feel like I should start giving back. You know, I'm lucky enough to have this service available, and you know, I felt like there was an imbalance in the universe, and you know, I should give back a little bit. So I reached out, and I started volunteering about once a week. Yeah, I mean, it was super fulfilling. I remember once I had brought an order directly to someone's door, and they were just, you know, so grateful, and you know, just like me, they couldn't say thank you enough, and it was just a really fulfilling experience, and I really enjoyed every second of it.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for volunteering and for sharing your story. Martina, we're going to turn to you. Tell us, I mean, you spoke so, you know, effusively, like I could feel your emotion in talking about what WSCAH means to you, but tell us a little bit more about your day-to-day and what your involvement looks like.
Like what? Say it again, please.
What your day-to-day, like when you're at WSCAH, what does your involvement look like? What are you doing while you're there?
I'm doing a little bit of everything because I don't like to be a stand-up mom. I help them with the customer outside. I'm going down there and pack the food, break some boxes, sweep, map, whatever, in any area they need me, I'll be there because I like to be moving. And another thing, WSCAH have a lot of customers from the 5 borough. I have so many years in WSCAH, almost 13 years. And I know majority of the customers in WSCAH, when they see me, I like when they go into me and say, hi, Martina, because I'm spending a year in Florida, and since 2019, they don't see me 20 for the pandemic. And they say, oh, Martina, I am so glad you're alive, you survived the pandemic. And they made me feel so good, you know, when they come to approach to me and they recognize me either way with the mask, you know.
Yeah.
And when they take that food also, they smile. For me, that's a 1 million smile, you know. I said, thank God, these people carry some food for today and a couple of more days. So I like to, I be in all over in the pantry. So I helping a little bit, direct the line to going to pick up the food. If they have any donation, I separate the donation and I put it to the volunteer. They give me the food to the customer and say, hey, give me this extra, because this, if they keep like for tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, they're gonna get spoiled, you know. Make sure the people use. And I tell people, hey, this is like example, this is a strawberry. So when you get home, cleaning or frosting or use for the smoothie, don't get the food get spoiled, you know. And that's my, I feel happy when I go over there and do a little bit of everything.
That's great. They're lucky to have you, Martina. So now I'm gonna ask all of you the same question. I'll go back. Maybe we'll just do the order we just did. Darlene, I'll go to you. But for everyone, you know, this event today is an opportunity for us to showcase the work that all of us, you as volunteers, us as food pantries, as advocates, that we're doing to make sure that we can feed all of our friends and neighbors throughout this city. And so the question is, what would you want our funders and stakeholders to know about your experience and the work of the programs you're involved with? If we had President Biden here, or Mayor Adams, or whoever is your, you know, Elon Musk, I don't know, whoever is your person who you think can really make change in this world, what would you want them to know about these programs? Darlene.
I would want them to know how necessary these programs are to the people in our community and really all over the world. Something that we need and something that I see we're getting, and you look at it, there's other people that are not getting that. So we need this, and we need it all over the world.
Great, thank you, Darlene. Nate, we'll turn it to you.
Yeah, not only echoing what Darlene said, these programs are super important, very lucrative, you know, they help people get by, but I think also I want them to know kind of, you know, what the root and like the essence of these programs are. It's not about like profit, it's not about, you know, business, it's just about fundamentally helping people, you know, people who need a helping hand, and they don't know where else to go, right? So I think that's what's really important about these programs, is it's you know, it's bringing back that kind of love thy neighbor kind of energy.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's great. Yeah, and I want to let folks know that when Nate and I were talking, and I had asked him a similar question, I said, what Nate would you want? What more would you want Met Council to do? He said, I would just want you to tell more people, right?
Yep.
And this idea that we need to make sure that more people know about these programs is not what I could do for him, but what we could do for each other, for our neighbors, for our entire city. Martina, I'm going to ask you the same. What would you want people to know about your experience and the work happening that you do and that our food programs do?
Well, if I have one of those advocacy people, you said, Mayor, President Biden in the front of me, I tell them, listen, we need to work together because we made the difference in our community. We need more funds to buy some food, to buy more stuff, to put food in the table for our community. Not any kind of food. We need some healthy food to put it in people's table. That's why we need the phone. We need to work in everybody together. You the president, you the mayor of the United States. I give you my time, but you give me the phone to make that thing happen over here in New York City.
Great, thank you. And just one quick last question. You all have been involved in your own ways, helping others, helping yourselves as you navigate an exciting time. I'm sure for many of you, Nate going to school, and for Darlene and Martina showing up at these pantries and making them better. And I would just wonder if you could share, like, what is the thing you're most proud of, you know, just about this last 2 years, or as you've navigated this challenging time and you think about food insecurity and helping others, like what's something you would want to share that people might not know about you, or just that you feel really good about during this last period? Darlene, why don't we start with you?
Well, I feel really good, and the reason why that is because I'm able to help people get the food and things that they, services that they need. And I get this through Holy Apostle. And it makes me feel good. It makes them feel good. And we all feel good. And I'm very happy and fortunate that I can help out with that. And they're there for us.
Great, great. Nate?
Yeah, I know I kind of mentioned it already, but on one volunteer shift, we had a bunch of boxes of you know, food orders, and somebody was up on the top floor. It was like a maybe 6-7 floor building, and the elevator was broken. So I'm lugging this box up the stairs, right? It was a very hot day, you know, I'm all sweaty, all tired. And I'm like, oh man, like, you know, this is quite the task. And then I drop the box, I knock on the door, and, you know, this little woman came out, and she was just so grateful. And, you know, like I said, just like me, she could not give enough thank yous. And I was like, man, all right, this makes it all worth it.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Nate. And Martina?
For me, may wake up every single day, that's a gift God gave me to me. And I share my gift of my life with some people when I'm going to the pantry. To me, the people, sometimes they have a people, they going with some problem, and I be able to help and the people, they made me happy. They made me feel proud with my time. I give it to that organization. No, that's what I'm here for, to serve it to the community. And that's why they made me feel happy and feel proud of myself. Helping the community for me is one of the major thing I do in my life.
Beautiful. That's a beautiful way to end. It's inspiring. Certainly inspires me to rededicate myself to this work that we could not do without volunteers and partners like all of you, whether that's through the feedback you give or your leadership in your communities, or referring other clients and people to our important services. So thank you all. I've so enjoyed spending this afternoon with you and our conversations preparing for today. Truly has been my honor, and we'll turn it back to Ben. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you so much, Jessica, and thank you, Darlene, Nate, and Martina. That was a fantastic conversation, and thank you so much for joining us. Next, we'll have a brief chat on the role of philanthropy in public policy, as I mentioned, with Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine and Shayna Wertheimer, Planning Manager at UJA Federation of New York. Very pleased to introduce and hand it over to them. Okay, here we go, Shayna and Mark, thank you.
Well, great to be here with you, Mark. I'm so glad we can talk about this important work together. Now that we're convening, maybe we could say post-pandemic, moving out of the pandemic, a lot in the food landscape has changed. And I think we all recognize that. I'm curious what you see moving into the future what are the priorities for your office in the recovery efforts, and how do you see the city supporting these new food needs that we've really uncovered during COVID-19?
Well, first, I just want to thank all of you who are leading in this sector for what you have done over the past 2.5 years. We confronted this directly and viscerally, the challenges of food insecurity in the pandemic in Uptown Manhattan. I was serving in the city council covering West Harlem and Washington Heights. And it was simply shocking, the number of people who had uncertainty in the source of their food during particularly the worst days of the pandemic, and still continuing today. We were able to mount a series of food distribution events, some with our longtime partner, Westside Campaign Against Hunger, and some with other partners. And I mean, we were seeing 1,000 people or more coming to some of these events, and a mix of people on those lines who I think defies the stereotype of who's confronting hunger in this city. I mean, honestly, it was people of all backgrounds and ages, and socioeconomic status, just people who lost their jobs, people who lost their livelihood, and the system of food pantries that was there to help in that moment really are some of the heroes of this pandemic. And I've often reflected on the fact that, I know we're going to talk about this, there was a lot, there was an increasing move to sophistication and scale in the sector that I think preceded the pandemic. Thank God, because we needed all of it. We needed all of that capacity to get through the last few years. As for the question of whether we're coming out of the pandemic or not, we could probably do an entire debate on that topic.
Yes.
We are probably over this status of being in permanent crisis because of COVID. I think that the long-term economic dislocation is very much still impacting New York City. And additional challenges emerging of rising costs as well, including rising costs for food. As you and leaders in this space are thinking about what the years ahead will look like, you should build in the likelihood that there will be other COVID surges, and likely one in the next fall to winter that could deal us a setback. But there's just no doubt that there are still people who need food assistance today, and that it probably significantly exceeds the baseline of 2019. I'm sure you have data on that, but I certainly feel it out there in Manhattan and the communities that we're working with. So I'm a little bit forgetting what your exact question was, Jana, but I think it was something about what could you rephrase it again? So
yeah, definitely. And I'm glad you brought up innovation, because I think we were really asked to talk about the roles of philanthropy and the roles of government. And I think one area, I'll speak for UJA, but I think for philanthropy generally, is we know we're not going to solve food insecurity alone, that it has to be a partnership through government and other sources. And where philanthropy is best is filling the holes. And sometimes that's seeding innovation, and the Roundtable is just one really beautiful example of that. But how do we use technology? And also areas where maybe government hasn't touched on things yet. And in the Get Food program during COVID, we saw a real emphasis on culturally competent food, whether that was kosher or halal, and really dialing some of the food insecurity response to the community need. So I feel like my original question is, what are the priorities you see going forward? And maybe that's one of these things, or maybe it's something else.
Well, given that food insecurity is with us today and will be for the foreseeable future, I mean, there may be a day where humanity overcomes this, but we need to build for a multi-year fight at a minimum. And that's going to require us operating at a scale, at a sophistication, and something you've referenced several times with cultural sensitivity that we might not have needed or certainly didn't have to an adequate degree pre-pandemic. And I've had the chance to visit operations like some of the Met Council supported food pantries, one I go to a lot at UJC in the Lower East Side. And just in the years that I've been going, the level of advances in sophistication are remarkable, and the use of technology now to customize orders, to facilitate home delivery, to allow for individualized dietary needs. And this has so many benefits. One, added dignity for the customers, but also to meet the cultural needs of people who observe kosher dietary laws or halal dietary laws, or even just immigrant or other cultural communities. For example, there's some amazing food distribution happening in the Chinese American community that really responds to the kinds of foods that people want to eat, and that's good for social and emotional health and probably physical health as well. The technology and customization allow for that, and I know there's a lot of work involved in the system building and the organization building to do that. I mean, we are so not in a world where you can just have a truck back up to a room and dump some food on a shelf and have people come in like that. I'm not sure that ever was a workable model, but it's definitely not in 2022. And so I was really happy that the roundtable came together, because you do need scale to achieve some of these, to build some of these systems, and to have groups that can collaborate at least on sharing of best practices, but even potentially operational integration is extremely helpful. So I am very grateful to UJA and the other donors that help make the roundtable possible. We're going to need that sophistication going forward.
Definitely. I wonder if you can speak a little to what you see the role of government being in leading that charge. And, here we have our virtual audience of direct service providers, donors, and people interested in this work, a captive audience. What do you see we could do to be helpful to you in that fight and advocacy?
Well, donors including government, public sector donors, but also private.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to fund the food itself, but it's not as sexy to fund the infrastructure.
Yeah.
You see this in human service nonprofits in every sector, but unfortunately it applies to food as well. But the organizations doing this work also need to pay rent and make payroll and buy software, and donors need to understand that in the world we're operating in now, those are necessities, and to achieve the scale and the sophistication and personalization that we were just talking about. And the public sector has to do better on that. So I think that we in government have to ensure that the funding models allow for that, so that organizations get the money with the flexibility that they need. Really, flexibility is the name of the game. And so we have to push for that on the inside. I think that there has been in the pandemic an increase in funding for food distribution. I mean, nothing's ever enough, but it has increased since pre-pandemic, but it's not baselined, at least at the city government level. And that means that every single year, it's basically a deadlift public policy fight to get it back in the budget.
Yeah.
And, we have succeeded. I think we came out pretty good in the budget that the city just passed a couple of weeks ago, but we want that to be baselined so that organizations can do long-term planning and have some security of knowing that that we're starting with an adequate level of funding there. And then you can fight for other improvements beyond that, or things you need fixed, but you have a little bit of security. I think there's a particular challenge that government has yet to address on culturally sensitive food, which doesn't always fit into the plain vanilla funding formulas.
Yeah.
And so we have to work that out because it is, as of today, generally more expensive to provide kosher, halal, and probably other forms of culturally responsive menus. So it would be helpful if government could be a partner in that as well. So I think there's a lot we have to do in improving public policy to meet the moment in food distribution.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I feel like UJA has put a lot of energy and effort into supporting pantries throughout New York City for staffing needs and some of these costs that currently aren't covered through government contracts, but are so vital to taking pantries to the next level. It's just incredible to see the work being done by teams of volunteers. And we've recognized that to really professionalize and implement some of the innovation that you discussed earlier requires a full-time staff member to really own it and oversee it. And so having some of that acknowledged and built into government funding in the future, I think would be an incredible and exciting next step. So I guess before we wrap up, I've been doing all the questions. Is there anything you want to ask me? It's okay if not.
You know, I'm going to make a request. How about that of you and the audience?
Yes.
So it's not exactly a question, but I think that we need to do some work to help policymakers understand what it takes to meet the need for food in the city today.
Yeah.
That I don't think the average elected official understands the sophistication that's required to do this right. And so my request of all of you is don't wait until the next budget season, next spring of 2023, to invite city council members and other elected officials and borough presidents and other policymakers just to come and spend time understanding your operation, meeting the people who are running it, getting a sense of the way technology has changed it, maybe just spending a day helping out in a way that would allow them to appreciate just what it takes to do this in 2022, so that when you need to make the budget ask, that people understand the work. So, you know, maybe UJA can help make that happen. Maybe the providers watching this can help make this happen. Just tap your relationships now in order to I think spread the message of how this sector has changed and why government needs to change with it.
Great. Well, be careful what you wish for. I anticipate a couple calls in your future, and just wanted to say thank you again, and thank you to the Roundtable and my fellow funders that are on this call for all the great work that you're doing. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Shana. Thank you to UJA for investing in this. And most of all, thanks to all of you who are watching, who are doing this work. It's incredibly important to the future of the city.
Thank you, Shana, and thank you, Mark. That was terrific. Thanks again for spending some time with us today. That was a terrific conversation. Next, I'd like to hand it over to our next panel discussion. This is the one that we'll be looking at facility design and how Roundtable members are innovating in that sphere. The members or the panelists for this conversation are Dr. Melanie Samuels, CEO and founder of the Campaign Against Hunger, Judy Seacon, Deputy Executive Director at New York Common Pantry, Greg Silverman, CEO and Executive Director of Westside Campaign Against Hunger, Alex Hughes, Director of Food and Nutrition Services at Project Hospitality, and Demetrius Komodromos, Partner at Method Design. This panel is moderated by Karen Karp, founder and president of Karen Karp and Partners. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Karen.
Wonderful. So greetings, everyone. Good afternoon to our audience. I would like to welcome everybody to the Roundtable 2022 convening session called By Design. For this conversation today, we are focused on the new and expansive and innovative work that Roundtable members are endeavoring into right at this moment to design and build and operate new facilities for receiving food, for distributing food, new facilities and new homes for the back office staff and administrative and other programs that some of our Roundtable members operate. And I'm very pleased to be joined today by Gregory Silverman, who is the CEO and Executive Director of Westside Campaign Against Hunger, Dr. Melanie Samuels, who's the Executive Director and founder of Campaign Against Hunger, based in Brooklyn. We have Alex Hughes, the Director of Food Programs at Project Hospitality, based in Staten Island. Demetrius Komodromos, who is an architect who has been working with a number of the Roundtable members on the design thinking and the actual design of these new facilities. And last but definitely not least, Judy Seacon, who's the Deputy Executive Director at New York Common Pantry. So I just really want to welcome everybody and thank you again for for agreeing to participate not only once last week but now twice this week in our new the new method that we're using for the Roundtable convening this year. I guess I'd like to kick it off with just doing a very quick round robin of each of you, and I'll call on you to just give our audience a very quick 1 minute or so introduction to the work that you are doing to design and develop and or have designed and developed and are now already operating in the case of Campaign Against Hunger, your new facilities, and what prompted you to take this direction? And what prompted you to take this direction? So what you're working on and what prompted you to take this direction. Dr. Samuels, let's actually start with you since you're furthest along of anybody here.
Thank you, Karen, and it's good to see everyone. I just want to give a shout out to the Roundtable, the extraordinary work that it has been doing, and how Greg has really fostered great relationship in New York City and with pantries like the Campaign Against Hunger. So it's been great, and we're looking forward to great things for 2022 and 2023, etc. The Campaign Against Hunger boldly started. I'm Melanie Samuels, and I am now the CEO and founder of the Campaign Against Hunger. And what we have done so far, and Karen, you mentioned that we are maybe a far ahead. I don't know how far ahead we are, but we have in 2020, in the height of the pandemic, decided that if we are going to address the needs of families that are living in fear, hungry, and in the height of this pandemic, our model that we presently have would not facilitate what we needed to do. And this has been a conversation that we've had for years. So now we took the time out, the Campaign Against Hunger took the time out to actually build out a space that we believe is conducive, it's operational, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later.
Alex, let's go to you.
Hi, yeah. So thanks for having me today. So at Project Hospitality, we're sort of unique. We're a program that one of the biggest missions that we work on is, of course, fighting the hunger gap, on Staten Island and the meal gap. We serve now over 3 million meals a year as an agency. We also have substance abuse treatment programs, mental health counseling, transitional housing, in some cases permanent housing, and other mental health services, benefit screenings. The problem is right now, a lot of those locations are on this part of the island. The housing case managers are on this part of the island. So what we really wanted to do was try to create a one-stop shop where our clients, who a lot of them are enrolled in multiple programs, can really just stop and go take care of all of their needs in one day. So instead of having to make up different appointments on different days of the week with all of our different programs, they can come shop for pantry, see their housing case manager, whatever they might need to do if they need to be screened for benefits. So our goal was to really position ourselves, not just geographically. We are going to be in a part of the island that is right down the street from one of the biggest NYCHA facilities on Staten Island. So we're going to be that much closer to a lot of our clients. And we really just wanted to make our space as accessible as possible. And we're almost there. Just there's some slight delays, and I can go into those a little bit later. But things are on the move, and we're getting there.
Terrific. Thank you. Judy, let's go to New York Common Pantry.
Yes, so we also, and it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having us. We also run a variety of programs. We started thinking about expansion of our warehousing space probably pre-pandemic. We run a senior program that serves, at that time served over 15,000 seniors per month. It now serves over 16,700 seniors. We had an existing warehouse space for that program, which we needed more space for that. But as we started thinking about growing that space, we also recognized our other needs to develop a mobile pantry, to be able to store more food for our existing brick and mortar pantries, to find a new service space for our senior, which was on the second floor and difficult to access for seniors. So we sort of built a plan of trying to find something as we call the unicorn, to put all these things together in one space. It didn't quite work out that way, but we have found two new spaces that we're currently working on, one a warehouse and one a service space. And it's been quite a journey. I think we started looking at spaces during the pandemic. And that also, as Dr. Samuel said, brought to us the need to do this expansion. And we were glad we'd already started at that time. We are now, I hope, close to finishing. I feel I'm looking at Demetrius, but I think we have the end is now in sight, and we're looking forward to the next step in this process.
Great, thank you, Greg. Tell us a little bit about WSCAH's journey to this moment.
Yeah, I mean, like everyone else who's already spoken, and symbolic of the roundtable and all our work, right? Like, we've all been doing this really strong work for a long time with, as Demetrius when I first met him said, like nonprofits all do, like with one hand tied behind our back. And so WSCAH has been in a basement of a church, a wonderful church, for 44 years now. And that might have been good when we were distributing 500,000 pounds of food a year, but when you add a zero onto that or more, and you're at 5 million pounds of food a year, lugging it up and down, back and forth, it doesn't matter how many volunteers you have. It's inefficient, and therefore it's not the best use of time or effort for our customers. And so we just wanted to push things forward. We reached out, and Robin Hood supported us in a needs assessment. We brought in Method and the team at KK&P, and we sort of really looked at what do we need and started diving into that. And we've got to what some say is, I don't know, a unicorn, but they do exist because we found what we think our unicorn, and we're in the process of design phase, and we've got a 20-year lease. And so we're last in line of everyone on this call. Hopefully we'll move in a year from now, but yeah, it's an exciting process.
Great. And Demetrius, we're so lucky to have you, an architect, and also the architect for two of our roundtable members. Two, right? Yeah. And so I guess my first question for you is a little bit of a different question, which is I'd love for you to share, when you first started working with nonprofits, and particularly with nonprofits that are in food distribution, right? Soup kitchens, food pantries, et cetera. Tell us about how you, what your approach is, and how you came up with that approach, and why you think that approach is the right approach for this moment in the evolution of organizations such as the roundtable members we have with us here today.
Right. So thank you for having me, to everyone. We love doing the work that we get to do, and so this is exciting to be able to talk about it. We started Method almost 15 years ago now, and we started off as just a normal full service architectural firm. And really quickly almost found like what I would kind of call a calling, which is to say that we work almost exclusively with mission-oriented organizations. And we got in touch with a lot of these organizations through 2 or 3 focused channels, one of them being Robin Hood Foundation. And right off the bat, we found with mission-oriented organizations at large, kind of like Greg referenced, we found that there was, and I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way, but I think when you're mission-oriented, you almost become a little bit less concerned with everything else because you're so focused on being able to do your work, right, and serving your community. So what we were seeing was that there was a situation where a prospective client or a community partner would be going to a broker first and then saying, we doubled we think we're going to double our staff, or we're doubling the people that we served. We need space. And one of 2 things happening. The broker would either say, oh, you should just get double the amount of space, or here's a space that, here's a landlord who I want to impress, and they have a space and I need to get rid of it to help them get it off their books. Let me see if I can sell that space to this prospective client or this prospective tenant. And what we found was that there was no one helping these mission-oriented organizations really think through and create what would really simply be just like a pro forma. Right? So we developed a process wherein we just call it like a discovery process. Nothing especially unique, but I think the really unique part is we do it before the client speaks to anyone else, which is to say we go in and we meet with the organization. We develop an org chart that then becomes spatialized, right? Like how much space is needed, what types of space, offices versus open seating. We do an operational assessment, and we start to really develop what we would call a quantitative and qualitative assessment of that organization, right? It's not just the physical needs and the operational needs, but culturally, what are you trying to say? What are you trying to project? What do you want the ethos to be? And how does that seep into volunteerism, to the staff, to the community that you serve, right? I think everyone on this call, specifically when we're talking about anti-hunger, we're talking about dignity, we're talking about choice, we're talking about these type of things, right? How does that embed itself into the architecture, right? So we develop, let's say, the performance criteria, and we develop the terms of success. And then that turns into a pro forma that then goes to a broker. And so once that's in place, we then help seek out the space. We don't let the brokers just go and do that. We actually go with them. We look at all the spaces, very quickly produce test fits so that we can assess whether or not something's viable. And then from there, we help do everything from negotiate the work letter and the lease with the lawyers and the other parts of the team, and then build the team to do the design work through the execution of the construction project.
Yeah, great, thank you. Your answer actually is a great lead into something that all of the organizations mentioned, and combined with what you just said leads great into my next question, my next prompt, which is all of the organizations represented here today have grown a lot over the years, and grown in different ways over the years. And there was a specific spike of growth, particularly with the COVID-19 pandemic, which taught all of your organizations how to do things a lot differently than you were doing them before, right? I mean, the nature of distributing food to people in need just changed very dramatically. So my thinking about what Demetrius just said about, it's not just how many pounds of food are you moving, but what is your organization and what are you here to do, and what is the culture and what is the desired impact that your organization wants to have on a community? How did all of you in the organizations, the 4 of you here with us today, how did your growth, let me see if I can phrase this question eloquently. What else were you designing for when you set off to design your new facilities, besides just the sheer handling of volumes more of food, of many, many multiples of the food that you might have been handling initially in your original location, in your original method. What else organizationally were you particularly designing for? Demetrius mentioned it generically, sort of generally, but what specifically was on your mind in terms of the vision you have for your organization and the home you need for that? Alex, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I think, I kind of mentioned it a little bit there and when I was speaking a little bit earlier, but we were really thinking about just accessibility, not just to our food pantry program, but to our other programs as well. And that just doesn't go with us just being physically in the same space, right? Our current pantry location has 2 floors, right? With just single door entrances. So like other pantries all around the city, we aren't able to move entire pallets at a time. We have to break down pallets, move stuff in case by case sometimes, hand truck by hand truck, which is certainly not the most efficient way to do things. It's really time consuming and it's physically laborious, So, we really wanted to be in a place where, okay, let's have the pantry specifically 1 floor. So that is now, that will be the case when we move. Our pantry will only be 1 floor. We have double doors there. We'll be able to wheel in and wheel out pallets, not just of, dry goods, but we're trying to expand our refrigeration as well, so we want to distribute as most fresh product as possible. We want to distribute, we just don't want to distribute as much canned goods. We really are trying to go with the fresh, so that we've kept that in mind when we've kind of been adjusting our plans as we go for this new space. Yeah. And one thing that we've really learned throughout the pandemic is just the importance and the need for flexibility. So we've kind of pivoted a little bit and shifted gears when thinking about specific things like what types of shelving are we going to go with? What's the design going to look like? Because it's different now than what it looked like a few years ago, right. Just because the volume is so much higher, but we want to maintain that quality of service that we developed and have, tried to really hard to maintain. So it's all of those things, it's just general accessibility was really a big thing for us, so just with the type of building it is and the layout, as well as the geographic location,
Thank you. Judy, let's go to you. What are some of the other things you were designing for, in addition to the better movement of more food?
Yeah, one of the things that was important for us was our staff's ability to use the space, and really recognizing, I think Greg said it, really recognizing how we've just made do and we've just sort of made it happen. And that's particularly hard on the staff because they're not in ideal locations. The movement of the food clearly affects them the most. They're the ones who are lifting and going up steps, and and they're not in a place where we can bring to them the dignity that we want to also bring to our clients. Mm-hmm. So we were really, that was one of the things, is that we wanted to bring our staff a place that they could feel proud of themselves and proud of the work that they do, sort of putting that into the design process. I think that became, abundantly clear during the pandemic when, what we asked our staff to do during that time and how they worked and, what they did to be able to serve people in New York was remarkable. And so we want to give them a space for them to feel good about what they're doing and to feel the same pride themselves that we see in them. So for us, that was very important. I also think the refrigeration, Alex talks about that, like we really want to be able to take advantage of food rescue, of being able to bring in more food, more timely, be able to store it appropriately and get it out appropriately. So having the extra refrigeration freezer space all allows us to do that and to take advantage of, efficiencies, cost savings, really, not be so dependent on purchasing power, but being more intentional about our food procurement and how we do that. And the space will allow us to do that. So for us, those were 2 big pieces of what we wanted to get in the design.
And Greg, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to mission, right? Like, truthfully, you're not able to actually hold a candle to your mission when you're working in these incredibly subpar spaces. Like, right, like we can do the best we can, but it's just not good enough. And it's when you talk about the dignity for our customers, like working in these weak spaces that aren't efficient, it just makes it it's not a good experience for our customers, and they deserve better, right? They just like, we want to increase access for all of our customers across that we work with across the city. I want to be able to distribute to them in their neighborhoods, in their communities, at their homes. And that means I need a space that can function related to the technology of distribution, related to how we do volunteerism. We have to be able to reimagine our work, and just going by the old systems, the broken systems, it is not how we're going to fight these issues. And I think it's it's why we're like, that's why it's also, I visited every one of the pantries on this call when I first took over my position. And you just start learning from everyone, like where their strengths are and how you can continue to be like them and learn from them. And so we're all getting better, and we owe it to our customers to do that.
Yes, there's a certain element of professionalization that all of your organizations are going through, which sometimes is a word that people don't want to use in the, in the nonprofit world, in the social service world, in the charity world. There's this kind of historic element of what charity means, and it means, it means a lot of grit, which is something that all of you are now kind of moving beyond into a more kind of professional, seamless way of operating. So Dr. Samuels, last but not least, for this particular question, what else were you designing for besides the physical aspects that you've already mentioned? You're muted. Sorry.
Well, when I look at how we designed was based on the needs of our community. And when I look at the system, as Greg mentioned, broken, right? When I look at how food has been distributed, and it has been, and for decades, we have worked hard to ensure that families receive food. And that to me was not the answer to what needed to be done, especially in communities of color. What I noticed was that we kept doing the same things over and over again that did not work. And there was millions of dollars that was thrown into the food system to hand out or select food, and it was not working. So in my design, and my thought was not necessarily because we had limited space or the space did not work, which it don't, and it still don't. It's not because the space did not necessarily work. It could work. It could continue the way it was, the way it is. But what I wanted to do, I wanted to design a model that would address food insecurity. I wanted to design a model that we talked about in a lot of times about missing meals. The design that I came up with was to ensure that we could address missing meals in our community. Mm-hmm. We would take a new approach. The warehouse space would not be used just normally. It would be used to address food insecurity the way it is in our city, and see if we can at least alleviate the problems that we're now facing, which based on what we have done, we are presently serving 14,000 families per week, which is an enormous number, over 25 million meals per year. And I'm saying healthy meals, yes, because we believe in the design should make a massive impact because it's a great investment. It's a lot of money that every person on this call have invested. It's a lot of hard work, capital campaign, hard work, and as Judy said, staffing is important. Each person put in program is important. Alex, Greg talked about just an overall change of the system. So when we approached it, when I looked at it, I was not trying just to expand present program. I was actually looking at how we could change the trajectory, how we could move to another level. right? And so that's our approach. And for that, even 5 years ago, we had an online system because we did not want to continue addressing hunger as it is. And I'll stop there.
Yeah. And you all are doing great at leading me to my next question. So my next question is actually for all of you, Demetrius, including you, which is, I'm interested to hear from each of you about what each of you are doing individually, but also collectively, what you are doing is shifting the landscape of how, I'm going to use a phrase here, which is the phrase that's applied to your organizations, but it's a phrase that is itself antiquated and needs a redesign, right? How is what all of you are working on right now, and Demetrius, how you're working with clients such as the food pantries and the Roundtable members, how is it shifting the landscape of the emergency food sector in New York? And why is it necessary to create that shift? So Dr. Samuels, you gave us a great lead into that, and I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into that topic. Why does this landscape need the changes that you're doing? Why does this sector and your customers, why do they need it? And how is it shifting? And also, how are people reacting to the work that you're doing? So that's a big, complicated question. I can break it down for each of you again if you need it. Demetrius, let's just start with you, since you didn't answer in the last question.
Well, so I think for me, I mean, this almost goes a little bit back to one of the things that I learned from working with everyone here, which is, I think when you come into not having had a client that does a specific type of work, you're a little, that world is a little bit opaque, right? So the anti-hunger work, I think I came into it thinking of it as charity, right? And I think it has been mentioned by everyone. It's not charity. And actually, one of the amazing things that I've learned is a kind of like almost an uncompromising position about anti-hunger work being a place where those being served deserve a certain level of quality, dignity, healthy access to healthy nutrition, right? And it's being uncompromising that allowed everyone here to make the insane shifts from pre-COVID to during COVID, right? And if we take that thread and extend it into what that means for architecture, what that means for us at Method, and what me and the staff talk about when we're designing something and bringing it to the table to, WSCAH or NYCP or POTS or one of the other organizations that we work with, is what does that mean for the spatial design? And for us, it's a place that's non-transactional, right? A place that's making place, right? Making some place that someone can go to and they feel like it's their community's living room, a place where they feel like it's clean, a place that they feel like they're welcome, right? Something that's a warm embrace and not a transaction at a window like fast food, right? The same way that we would design a restaurant, a high-end restaurant, should be the same way that we should be thinking about designing a food pantry distribution site, right? And that's something that I learned from these folks here, right? Is being uncompromising about the level of quality that you're leveraging, right? Which can be difficult when you're working in certain given conditions from like you're renting from a landlord, right? But nevertheless, we found that you can leverage it, you can do it, and you can be uncompromising about the quality of space that you make. So I think it dawned on all of us here at Method that it's actually like it's what we do for any for-profit, nonprofit, home, whatever it is. Just design the absolute best space that you can, right? It's not charity, right? It's a design problem, and one in which you're making place for people to meet and to socialize and to develop stronger feelings of community.
Yeah, your response speaks to the permanence of the organizations and the work that they do as an embedded part of the communities in which they work.
Their fabric.
Yeah. So Greg, let's go to you. Like, how do you see either the general food landscape in New York City shifting as a kind of a result of what it is you're working on and how you'll be able to work differently, or even just specifically the importance of what you're doing to the shifts in this sector?
Well, I think to Demetrius said, it's a design problem. and I think that's actually the case. And when you design something, you're intentional about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reverse is how we've dealt with hunger for many decades, right? We've gotten handouts and we distribute those handouts. And we're considered really good. When I got to WSCAH, we gave out like 20% of our food was fresh produce. And a lot of it was food we had to get rid of because what we were given was a bunch of rotting carrots, right? And so how do we, that's not intentional design. That's like making everyone feel good about poor quality. And so we refuse that, right? Like we start to say like, let's be intentional intentional by refusing food, right? We're intentional by treating our customers with the respect and dignity they deserve. We're intentional in design and we're intentional about collaboration because that's what we're trying to do, is to change the system. And so it scares people, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the roundtable is very scary, right? Because we're doing this crazy thing, which is we share a lot of data. We share a lot of information. And why do we do that? A couple of funders have asked me, why do you do that? And we're like, because we're all trying to solve a problem. We're actually working towards mission. There is no competition, right? There's collaboration. And I think that, right, that's the rub, is like, that's what we have to change. And I think all these organizations creating new spaces should, as Dr. Samuel said to me a while back, like the sort of the question, right, isn't like, why are you doing this? The question is like, it's amazing that all your organizations are like building these better spaces. Let's partner with you. We all want to just partner with groups because we only care about one thing, is helping our community. Right. We're not, and I think that's where the system is changing. And I think intentional design is, hits on all of that.
Yes. Alex, you're shaking your head vigorously, so I want you to speak next.
Yeah, no, it's just, I mean, you've been hearing it in so many different ways throughout the call. I mean, we've heard Greg, Melanie, and Judy all say it in one way or another. It's about not just giving someone food just to say, look, we gave this person food and we served X amount of meals. It's not just about that. It's about the quality of the product. It's about the intentionality of the purchasing of that product. And one thing that's just been a constant thought is, it's insane to me that it took a global pandemic for us to get more resources. Why did it take for a global emergency for us to get resources where honestly, and we can even still say that we still need more resources, whether it's financial or otherwise. So that's one thing that's just so important to me and to I'm sure every campaign organization on this call, is just that collaboration became that much more powerful because the amount of resources that we were being allocated shot up, right, and rightfully so. But my whole thing is it should have been higher before the pandemic.
Begin with, yeah. No, this is, I mean, I've been doing this work for long enough to have been through 9/11, to have been through Superstorm Sandy, to the recession, and now COVID, where in each of those situations, money just flooded into organizations like yours. But I have to say, in the COVID-19 pandemic, from what I can see, not only with all of you, but through the other work that we're doing with other organizations, you are really making the most of this influx of resources in a way that in a way I didn't experience before. There's a lot of innovation going on. So Dr. Samuels, I'll go to you, and then we'll have Judy give the last word on this topic, which is how would you answer kind of this question about how the work you're doing is impacting the sector around you?
I would just add that the changes are obvious. We have working together makes a difference, right? Really for partners, we have the Campaign Against Hunger during the pandemic was able to collaborate with over 250 partners on the ground that made it all possible. And now as everybody's settling in somewhat, We're still going through some kind of pandemic, not as it was before, but nevertheless, what we're facing, what we're looking at now is that we're seeing that we took bold steps in 2020, but we're seeing results, right? And that's what we wanted to see. Once you have, and Greg talked about the design, right? Once we have done a lot of investment, not only financially, but a lot of time we have put into this, hours of working as heads of our organization. We've spent a lot of hours, sleepless nights, trying to find out how best to take care of communities that are looking towards us. And that's important for everyone to understand, that in every community that we go, individuals are looking for us for answers because we are on the ground. We have the communication skills on the ground. We know Sue and we know Sarah, right? We know the mothers, we know the fathers. So what we're seeing now is results. We're looking at, it's not over yet. This is the beginning. But the encouragement part of it that I look at is how we are encouraged by families that are actually coming back now and saying, thank you. We are encouraged also that selective areas, deep pockets of poverty that was once missing from the typical pantry or from the brick and mortar for so many reasons. We know reasons why they weren't accessing food. Based on how we have created the model, we can now identify, we can clearly say, this is why this area has been voided for so long. And because of the steps we've taken, we are seeing great results. Not only that, but I need to just stress, with us working together collectively the way we are sharing data, we are understanding more, and we're learning from each other, and we're sharing with each other. This is all good. I think it's New York City is about to set a new standard in food insecurity based on what we're doing. Yes. And I see this as a national, the future is national, because what we're doing is impacting, we're changing and saving lives at the same time, right? So now what we have put in place, it's not to go back to things as the usual. We have stepped out of the usual. We have gotten out of the Groundhog Days, and now we are stepping into a new era of addressing hunger. And the designs of the building tells us clearly that we are not just a pantry in the basement or in the hollow places, or this is all new.
Yes. Judy, something to add to this? Has been incredibly rich. This part of the conversation has been incredibly rich.
Yes. I mean, I'm going to just talk a little as personal experience. Before I came to New York Common Pantry, I didn't have a background in this field, but I did work in many nonprofit social service, a long time in the drug rehabilitation field in New York City. And that was a much more, maybe a mature service delivery system where it was recognized what part those types of nonprofits played in solving the problems of the city. I think for emergency food providers, we are growing to that point. I think there's a recognition that this is an intractable problem, that we are the people who are able to solve that problem, that we have the knowledge, and with this design, with our spaces, with looking at this in this whole different system delivery way, we are able to come up and we provide those real solutions, and working together is a huge part of this. This wouldn't be possible if we didn't work jointly to solve this problem, but it's a recognition of the maturity of the field. It's a recognition of the professionalism of the field, of what we bring to it, that we're more than just handing out canned foods that somebody's donated to us at this point, that we really are working every day on the ground to provide solutions to this problem. And it's a recognition, I mean, it comes with that is a recognition that this is a problem. I think the pandemic made that visible to people, where it was visible to us. It may not have been visible to the public at large so much, but the pandemic certainly gave us that opportunity to work with that that knowledge and to expand on that. But so it's an exciting place to be at this point in terms of the evolution of the system. And I think, we are all like at the right place to keep moving this forward and to start, to not start, to continue to keep on providing, those services that are so needed in the city for the people we serve. You think about that. You just think about it on a personal level, hunger, not knowing where your next meal is coming from, what that does to you emotionally, mentally, physically, and so, the ability to work with people and to help them when they're in that space is just so important. But also putting around all those parameters of the field and what the field needs to do to be able to continue to do that in the right way.
Right. I love how all of you have spoken about collaboration, and, everybody tends to agree that collaboration is good and working together is good. I think one of the things I've noticed from being a part of the Roundtable since the beginning of it is to see, especially as new organizations come along, how much easier it is to become more open and more collaborative the more you do it, and the core group is the way the core group has expanded to first 6 organizations from the original 4 and now 8 organizations. And the collective voice that you are all building by virtue of working together is definitely in and of itself going to have an impact on the sector, in addition to what you're physically doing with your new spaces and how you're shifting your operations and deepening your focus on dignity and choice and using lots of different tools, physical tools, as well as technological tools and human resources strategies, et cetera. We are at the time we would have had for this session, 37 minutes. And so I want to actually start to move to wrap this up, which is, I would like each of you to use the last few minutes that we have together, that each of you have together, to send a message to somebody. So if you were to, each of you send a message to a funder or to another organization in your sector, in your community that might be thinking about their next decisions around space, around operations, around culture, a policymaker, a funder, a peer organization, or all three, what would the message be that you have based on the experience that you've had working on your own design approaches and approaches to expansion and deepening of your work? What message would you have, and who would it be for? Let's see, I'm going to start with Greg this time.
Collaboration, and forcing it upon people, right? Like, I would say the Roundtable is a great example of, I guess, horizontal collaboration. Like, we're all peers in this sector. And as we think about fighting hunger, also have to look vertically, right? Like up and down the supply chain. And I think looking at organizations as if you're a funder and saying, like, how are groups collaborating? Because if you're not collaborating, you're not trying to solve a bigger problem. And therefore, like, why are you funding them? Like, we want to see more collaboration. It's not just the Roundtable. It's not just an anti-hunger work, but like, you have to collaborate across sectors. You have to collaborate.
Who is, Greg, sorry to interrupt you. Who is your message for?
I think any funder, and that can be from the public sector, like the government, to individual, foundations. I think it's less for the individual donor, but more like the bigger foundation world of saying, like, look, you have a list of 100 grantees. I would hope you're forcing them to collaborate, right? Like, it's how a number of us, you could look at, we had, Method has worked through Robin Hood in a lot of ways with different grantees. And we've all gained from each other on this. And that's great collaboration. And so if I was a funder and I was looking at organizations and saying, like, wait, who do they work with? I'd want to be seeing that as opposed to how great someone is on their own. Because if they think they're great on their own, they're probably not telling you the full story.
Great. Judy, let's go to you.
Yeah, I think collaboration is really important. I think all of the things that we've learned through this process we need to share with other people to prevent some of those same pain points. Greg, we met with WSCAH to talk through a lot of this, which I think was really important. Demetrius has informed us repeatedly. We've seen other people's spaces. We've learned from the process. It's not easy, and it's not easy for us who are really novices at this whole idea of designing and building a warehouse. So the fact that we can learn from each other and prevent, help to head off problems, help to identify issues, help to solve issues together. You can't do it alone. So it's impossible.
And is that message for any particular?
Well, I think I think that the message would be for funders or for consultants or for people who are, working with us through the process, is understanding who we are in the field and what we need to learn from this as well. So I think maybe the message is also patience as we work through these things. But yeah, I think, we need a little room to work together, learn from each other, and to be able to, figure these things out. We're not going to have the answers immediately.
Yeah.
So we're not going to be perfect.
Demetrius, we're gonna shift to you, which is it will be a different message potentially to a different audience, and then we'll wrap up with Alex and Dr. Samuels.
Well, it's a quick two-part, which is to say, when I listen to the conversation, there's been so much knowledge produced over the years from working within this, right? Dr. Samuels and Greg and Judy and Alex, right? Like the design is not on par with the knowledge that's been produced within the industry already, right? And the only way to get that to that level is to commit resource to making sure that the spaces are designed at the level that they need to be at, so that the space gets out of the way of mission-oriented organizations doing the work, right? And in this way, like, design doesn't cost, it pays, right? So if you're speaking to a funder, your dollar will be worth 100 or 1,000 or much more than that if you committed to helping these organizations fund design work so that they can make spaces that really allow them to do their mission, right? So that's I think where I would put pressure. I mean, it's maybe self-serving to say they should spend money on design, but I really do believe that.
Yeah. Alex, how about you? What is your message and who is it for?
So yeah, I think my message would be for any other organization, emergency food provider or not, if they be wanting or thinking about making some of the leaps and some of the jumps that the organizations on here have, I would just say, find your internal champions, for this change, not just at the top level, but at each level of the organization. Change is something that it can be top down, it can be bottom up, it can be from, ideally it would be accepted at all different levels, because then at that point you can just permeate throughout the whole agency, and then you can really get some, you can really make some progress. And also don't shy away from having difficult conversations, a lot of those difficult conversations, whether it's with, potential funders or just being truthful and honest. That's where a lot of growth takes place. And I know that we've talked about a lot of difficult topics throughout the years in this on this collective, with this collective, and that's been such a positive things to be able to have those conversations. And I know that we've grown so much from just those conversations. So my message again would just be, make that leap, find your internal champions for change, and make that change happen.
Wonderful, thank you. And Dr. Samuels, what's your message and who's it for?
I have to agree with everyone that with their closeout statement, and I just want to add to our partners that sometimes you might not be strong financially or have all the resources together, but there are so many organizations like those at the Roundtable that you can have a conversation with. You'd never know until you make that call or send that email. I think that's important, that the doors are open. We're willing to work with each and every one. So we're open for that. Again, that's collaboration. To our funders, I would say that we're on a good thing. This is really a game changer, what we're doing. And your continuous support is important to us, as we believe that the work has just begun, but there are some positive results that are coming forward, and your investment would return 100-folds. And I'll stop there.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Very good. That's wonderful, all of you. I'll just wrap this up by saying some of the things that really resonated to me from this conversation. Certainly about collaboration, that what you've learned from each other in order to start designing your own spaces. So you're learning from the world, you're learning from the landscape of your peer organizations as part of adding to the formula that you have in your, for yourselves about what is everybody else doing and how are they approaching it? What do we need? And how are we going to endeavor to design for what we need? And also where are we going and what are we doing it for? And I want to underscore it. I mean, it was mentioned in this conversation, but I want to actually underscore it again. I know that each of you are doing what you're doing with design and facilities and operations is to get the best quality, freshest, healthiest food to your community members, because there hasn't been a way to get as much of that you need in and out of your doors, right? With your old systems, with the old facilities, with the old ways of working, with the old or non-existent collaborations and partnerships. So really just to underscore that, to the point of how prudent an investment how prudent an investment is supporting organizations to do this design work, to really be thinking about why we even came up with the title of this session, by design. It's like the work that you're doing is by design. It is intentional. It's not just a reaction to a problem that seems like an emergency. To be intentional about it and to be collaborative about it, all for the purpose of getting better quality, healthier, more nutritious food to community members across New York City who really need it. Your work it's commendable and it's inspiring. And I hope that this session reaches many people who will be inspired by it. So I just want to say thank you to all of you, and thank you to our audience, whoever that's going to be, for tuning into this session. And I hope we get some great feedback from it.
Thank you to Karen and our panelists on that last conversation. That was excellent. So exciting to hear about all the great things going on facility design wise there. So thanks again for spending that time with us. And next, I'd like to kick off our closing segment before Greg comes back to send us all off. This next conversation will feature Bronwyn Starr, Senior Program Officer at the New York Health Foundation, and Natasha Pernica, Executive Director at the Food Pantries for the Capital District. They'll be giving a little bit of context for the Roundtable's work and how it fits into broader statewide efforts at collective action and collaboration. So with that, I'll hand it over to Bronwyn and Natasha. Thank you.
Hi, as Ben mentioned, I'm Bronwyn Starr. I am a Senior Program Officer at the New York Health Foundation. Hi, Natasha. It's good to see you.
Hey, Bronwyn.
I'm really excited to have this opportunity to chat today, and thank you to Greg for inviting us. The New York Health Foundation was an early supporter of the Roundtable. We are very interested in improving the availability of healthy food, and collective purchasing and procurement is one of our strategies to do this across the state. Through my conversations with Greg, he suggested I reach out to you, Natasha. So a plug for Greg. He is so open to making connections and recognizing that we can do more collaboratively than alone and individually. And Natasha, I feel like you and Greg are very like-minded like that. In that respect, you launched the Community Food Assistance Network in the Capital Region to bring together community-based food assistance providers. And I want to pick your brain about the collaborative model and why it's important for emergency food providers to really consider this as a new way to operate moving forward. I feel like the antiquated food pantry model of purchasing food from a food bank and then distributing it seems not to have solved our nation's food insecurity problem. I know that's a shock to hear, but I would love to hear your thoughts about decentralizing power and building your own power, because you know what your clients need and want, and obviously your clients know what they need and what they want.
Sure. Thanks, Bronwyn. And yes, thanks to Greg for bringing us together for this opportunity. And I think just, you talked about we haven't quite solved our nation's food insecurity problem. First off, before I get into the collaborative work that we're doing, just want to say that, we believe that charity is not necessarily the answer to solving hunger. Really, number one is making sure that everyone is making living wages. And number two, it's really important to have fully funded federal assistance programs that everyone has access to. Those two things are really important. And then the third level of ending food insecurity is charity, which is what we're doing. So I work for the Food Pantries for the Capital District. It's a coalition of food pantries. We've been around since 1979, and really we've been doing collective and collaborative work since the 1970s. And we were started to really do a lot of service coordination. And over time, gaps have emerged in the system or identified. I mean, think about it. Half of the food pantries in our area are totally volunteer run. And so moving the amount of food through our system requires a lot of logistics. And so not only do we do service coordination, but we move a lot of food with our fleet of box trucks. We fill the gaps. And something that we've been doing for a long time is collective purchasing as a coalition. We mainly focus on collective purchasing of diapers and formula as a member of the National Diaper Bank Network. But we can oftentimes get better prices by doing collective wholesale purchasing ourselves, as opposed to paying for things through our food bank. So we've found that when there are items not available at the food bank, especially as we're committed to stocking healthy foods and culturally appropriate foods, we really can do more by working together, and our dollars go farther.
Right. I mean, thank you for that. I think in one sense, as you said before, you spoke about living wages, and in one sense, the problem is simple. We just need to pay people more. People need more money to purchase healthier food. So that's sort of your day-to-day job and nuts and bolts of your programming. How are you thinking about, and maybe you and Greg are doing this together, thinking about this from a policy standpoint, from a long-term sort of systems change, what can be done?
Yeah, I think when we're looking at what is called the emergency food system, which is really a supplemental food system of, the supply chain and policy, I think we've moved much farther beyond just food goes to the warehouse and then it goes out. We're much beyond that in our food system work. And so when we're looking at policies and programs, we really need to focus on what I call the wholesalers. Like the food banks are kind of like the wholesalers, and food pantries and other community food programs are like the retail side. And we've learned a lot over the years about what works for the consumers that we're working with, and, access, transportation, culturally appropriate foods. And so some examples of where this policy and programming work, having us speak as a voice together across New York State has been helpful, especially during the pandemic, where upstate and downstate have been working together, because while the scale of our work might be different, we're still struggling with some of the same challenges. And an example would be the state worked really quickly during the initial pandemic shutdown to create the Nourish New York program, where they were able to economically help New York State agriculture by funding the purchase of New York State products, produce, dairy, to distribute out through food pantries and food banks and other organizations. And it worked really well during the time of crisis. But now, and we applaud New York State for taking this program on now as a regular program. But those of us who are on the retail side have some suggestions on how we can make this program better, how we can have more control over the products that we're purchasing so that we're meeting the specific needs in our own communities. Also, buying at a smaller scale than a food bank level. A lot of times individual food pantries can make purchases from local producers. So it helps with the local economy and some of the smaller scale farms. And we also have more control over when the food comes, how much we're ordering. So we're reducing food waste and making sure that the food that people are getting, they have choice and dignity. They're not just getting a box of who knows what and do with it what you can. People are able to choose. These are products and food things that I like and I know how to use, and I will eat them.
Key point. Great. You will eat them. Yeah. So, and to your point, you know, food prices, speaking of local food prices in supermarkets are higher than they've been in years, in decades, and they're expected to only get higher. Purchasing from New York State producers, the food, you know, I know the local food is cheaper. The food actually right now at farmers markets across the country is cheaper than the food you will find packaged food in supermarkets. And so it's really important to build on these opportunities for food pantries, like you said, to have their choice and to make these connections to local food and local producers. Like you said, it's better for the economies, it's better for our health, it's better for the environment. In closing, I want to ask, what's at the top of your wish list for the next few years? What would you like to see most happen with the collaborative and at the state level to address all of these issues that we've talked about today?
Yeah, I think for some things, just taking a look at all of our different roles that we play in the food system and recognizing that there's a lot of opportunities where we can do more by working together. I mean, one point I want to make is that sometime, you know, in my 20-year nonprofit career, there's always about, you know, we don't want to duplicate services. We don't want to duplicate services. But one of the things I've learned is that duplication of services isn't necessarily a negative thing. It actually adds resiliency to the supply chain so that you're not just reliant on one source of food. You have other people who are able to procure food and collaborate, and you can provide more variety and more volume of food that way. So I think as we move forward, it's identifying opportunities to work collectively as a food system, and identifying, you know, what opportunities work best for which parts of the system so that we can save money, be more effective, and really improve the quality of the food that's going out too. You know, you talked about the price of food for people in the community, and the things that people who seek assistance from food pantries want are really the fresh foods, the things that are more expensive, meats, dairy, fresh produce. Those are the more expensive food items. And many of those things are grown right here in New York. Exactly. And we're able to add the quality produce, the quality foods to our emergency food system. We're going to have an impact on more than just hunger, but also health. And a lot of things will go into that. I think other areas are just making sure that our emergency food providers have the resources they need to provide consistent services. As I mentioned, 50% of our coalition here in the capital region is totally volunteer run. That means we're not always able to do a home delivery. We're not always able to be open, like with a lot of operating hours. And I think as we're able to provide more resources, when we look at the number of people relying on charity to get their food needs met, we believe that having a high quality of service and increasing access is really important. And by working together, we'll be able to do that and inform policies and programs that support the important work that we're all doing together.
Great. Thank you so much, Natasha. I think we're at our time limit. I think this has been really informative for me, and I hope it can spark discussion with the viewers today who are watching this. So thank you again, Natasha. It was great to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks, Bronwyn.
Thanks so much, Bronwyn and Natasha. That was terrific. Thanks again for taking some time to have that conversation as part of our program today. So with that, I think I'd like to hand it over to Greg. He'll close out the program. Thanks again, everyone, for for tuning in for this series of conversations. And Greg, with that, I'll hand it over to you. Thank you.
The Roundtable will continue its important work. Be on the lookout in your email inbox for our annual report and a link to our new video in the weeks ahead. Thank you to all our speakers and panelists and the supporters of the Roundtable. Thanks to everyone who was part of our event today. As you have heard and are seeing, the systems continue to evolve. On the front lines of this work, we are all seeing cutbacks from longstanding supporters of communities in need. We see a lack of collaboration. We see lack of innovation, but not as you have heard today. This is not the case across our organizations. The Roundtable is strong, the Roundtable is growing, and the Roundtable has room for you too to join us. So thank you all for tuning in today. We look forward to keeping you all informed about the work of the Roundtable in the months ahead.